Guys, what's wrong with the UFC right now? Hello everybody, and thank you for clicking on the video, and if you could take a moment to subscribe, that would be great, but with that said, let's get into it. First order of business, is anyone actually paying for this? Dana, please let me explain. The UFC has used the pay-per-view for a long time now. Just like boxing, it maximizes revenue and creates premium events, but in my opinion, it's outdated. If you take a look at the cost, it's about $100 to watch one UFC event. And that includes the ESPN Plus subscription that you have to pay for and the $79.99 charge per UFC event. And if you add all that up, that is a lot of money that I'm not going to spend. Just for some reference, the MLS or Major League Soccer charges $99 for the entire season pass on Apple TV. A UFC main card lasts about 3 hours, and that's if everything runs smoothly. And it wasn't always like this. Just 5 years ago, a UFC pay-per-view cost about $50. Don't get me wrong, still pretty expensive, but $100? Now, let's be real for a second. That price tag doesn't stop dedicated fans like me. $70. But what this does do is prevent casual fans from getting invested and the sport finding new audiences. To put it plainly, we live in an attention-driven economy, and right now, the UFC is losing mainstream attention. If you haven't figured out by now, this video is kind of me complaining and ranting, but also trying to give the UFC business advice. I realize that that is stupid because they are a billion-dollar company, but hey, Dana, please give me a job. Speaking of attention, why do all the champions suck? Guys, we have a champions problem. Well, more like a star problem. Coming from someone who loves wrestling and jiu-jitsu and has competed in both, I can knowingly say that nobody cares. But what sells in MMA? You all know. Striking, young, loud, talented fighters, usually 145 or above, and has decent English. Am I describing Conor McGregor? Yes, but we'll get to him later. That's typically the style that crosses over into the US mainstream and makes them money. With that said, let's take a look at our current champions and see where they rank based off marketability. Flyweight, Alexander Pantoja, technical, but nobody cares about the little guys. 0 for 1. Bantamweight, Merab, just beat the UFC's favorite Sean O'Malley by decision. 0 for 2. Ilia Topuria, I'm okay with that one. 1 for 3. Lightweight, Islam Makhachev, might be the GOAT at 155, hilarious, and from Dagestan. I'll give it to him. 2 for 4. Welterweight, Bilal Muhammad. Respectfully, what? Middleweight, Dricus du Plessis, in my opinion, one knockout away from being a star. 3 for 6. Light heavyweight, Magomed Ankalaev. Again. Who? Heavyweight, Jon Jones. Greatest of all time, but holding up the division. 3 for 8. Yeah, that's a lot worse than I thought. I'm not saying these guys aren't amazing fighters. This is one of the most talented and technical groups of champions we've had in a long time. But in terms of hype, I knew Ankalaev was going to win. Another quick note, I am talking from the American mainstream perspective. You might love Merab or Bilal, and that's fine. I love Islam Makhachev. I think he's an amazing fighter and probably should be the face of the UFC.
Black belt, who give him that? We have to check that moment.
But as a UFC fan, I want to see the sport grow as well, and to do that, you need hype. But let's get to the root of the problem. Now we're going to talk about Dana White's favorite subject. Fighter pay. Your typical starter contract in the UFC is $20K to win your fight and $20K to show up. Now, if you make that America, you are homeless. But in places like Brazil, where that money goes a little longer, you can live pretty comfortably on that salary. So what this leads to is less Americans getting into MMA. And that's a problem because America typically produces the most UFC fighters. And right now, we have one American champ, and it's a paper belt. And don't mishear me either. I love the international fans and the international fighters, Charles Oliveira, all the guys from Dagestan, etc., etc., etc. But if you want to keep selling out arenas in the United States, you need to bring in more American fighters. And to do that, you might have to pay them a little more. Alright, there are 2 real rants in this video. Let's get to the first one. Going back to that whole paper belt thing, let's talk about Jon Jones. Jon Bones Jones is currently holding up the heavyweight division and has been for a while now. Jon is the greatest of all time. no question. But he will not fight the rightful champ Tom Aspinall. He's been ducking for so long, it's his Twitter profile picture. And now he's asking for 6 months to prepare for this fight? And if he just wants to retire, that's fine. Like I said, he's the greatest fighter of all time, but you're wasting Tom Aspinall's career right now. Because at this point, Tom Aspinall is the greatest interim champ of all time. Let this fight happen. In the past, the UFC has always been about making the fights that the fans want to see, and they're not really doing that right now. The UFC's low fighter pay has created an environment where fighters rely on 50K bonuses. And on one hand, this leads to exciting fighters like Max Holloway, Justin Gaethje. But it also creates fighters like Sean Strickland. Sean spends the entire press conference and lead up to the fight, hyping up the fight.
We're gonna put on a war.
And then delivers by dancing around for 25 minutes. Smart? Yes. Brings the UFC tons of money. Brings Sean Strickland tons of money, hopefully. But is it exciting? Absolutely not. Now, this worked for fighters like Conor McGregor, who, don't worry, we'll get to at the end, because he was able to deliver on those promises. And I have no hate for Sean Strickland or his fighting style. He's smart, he's an intelligent striker, and probably one of the best in the UFC. I'm blaming the company for forcing this we go to war attitude. And as much as I hate to agree with Jake the problem child Paul, you need to pay the fighters more, Dana. A $12.1 billion company that sells out arenas on a monthly basis can't afford it. Of course, there have been lawsuits and settlements in the past, but I think raising the UFC's fighter pay could also help with its public image. I think a professional sports team shouldn't have to have its players working other jobs as well, especially one that requires hours of training and years of practice to be able to do. Every fighter in the UFC is a world-class fighter, and I think they should be paid like one. So, I'm not here just to complain. Let's take a look at some solutions. Pay the fighters. This attracts more English-speaking fighters, which creates more hype. More hype equals more casual fans. More casual fans equals more money for Dana White. Step 2. Get another star. Now, of course, this is easier said than done. Finding another talent that can transcend the sport is not an easy task. But I think paying fighters more opens up more people to the sport, which just increases your chances. And number 3, fix the pay-per-view. I actually saw while writing the script for this video that the UFC was maybe in talks with Netflix. They have had trouble streaming sports events in the past, but if they could work this out, and I think that would be a pretty good idea, I would definitely be in favor. But one problem I don't know how to fix is the McGregor problem. This one's kind of a rant, so get ready. Hate him or love him, Conor McGregor has been the face of the sport of MMA for almost a decade. But he is not fighting again. I want to believe he'll fight. Everyone wants to believe he'll fight. He brings so much attention to the UFC, which, like I said earlier, as a fan, I'm a fan of. But now he's running for office. He's made way too much money. He's in movies now. He's not a fighter, and he hasn't been for a long time. And that's no disrespect to Conor McGregor. Have I said his name enough? He did great things for the sport. He made double champs cool. He made money fights cool. He made forced antics cool. Now people waste their time trying to copy him, and people just see right through that. Also, rest in peace, Michael Chandler.
What weight it's gonna be? 184.
You wanna do 185? I'll do 185.
If they what y'all told.
Bro waited a full year, did a full season of tough, and still didn't get to fight Conor. I really hope they paid him for that. Finally, what I'll say is, I do think the UFC should pay their fighters more. I do think pay-per-view needs to be fixed. But that's just because I want to see the sport I love grow and more people be able to enjoy it like I do. Alright, that's all I got for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you could, do your boy a solid and write something in the comments below. The only person I think will watch this is my UFC buddy, but if you're watching this, I must have done something right. If you made it this far, thank you for sticking around, and new videos hopefully every 2 weeks.